Okay, Gaslands. So looking forward to getting into this game. Oh, so cars. Okay. How do I get these out? Come on, I want to play. Oh, yes. Woo. Okay. Well, they are fantastic. Okay, let's chuck that out of the way. And I guess I'm going to need some terrain. Okay. Oh. What about nice mountain pass? Oh, yes. Oh, I'm going to enjoy this so much. Let's go. Well guys, here it is, the next of my terrain game tables. This has been a real pleasure to build. Slightly different to the lava terrain in that these are square panels, but it modulates with the magma and lava terrain, which is excellent. It means I can expand that, I can expand this in different directions, and it's made me realise I want to build now a few more base landscapes from which to build on with extendable kits, as it were. So this is my rocky terrain. This could suit for a rocky mountain pass. It can work for, you know, a valley of some description. It tiles, so if you can imagine, you know, you can turn these so that you are able to sequence a whole run almost in a platform game style as you work your way through, or your adventuring party work their way through the various features. Now I want to build on this, as I say, with expansion kits. That's the only way I can phrase it. That's going to make these even more playable in even more games, so that this could suit everything from a D&D campaign to Warhammer. I have a very sweet little stop motion animation at the end of this how-to video, which is a prelude to Gaslands, as I've bought the book for Gaslands. So the whole thing cost about maybe about £15. The major part of that is the £10 for the EVA foam tiles, the floor tiles you use in a garage or play group. So that was a tenner. The rest of it is just scrap and kitchen roll, really. A pound or two in other products. So it's really cheap to make. You get a lot of fun making it, and you obviously get a lot of fun playing on it. So anyway, I will shut up now and let's do this.
Hey guys, so the initial build idea here really kind of stemmed from the success of the construction and the use of my lava terrain that I showed you a few weeks ago. The difference here, those were made on 10-inch by 20-inch raised blocks. You can see how I put those together in that video. Here I decided I wanted 4 blocks that were modular, but these are 20-inch by 20-inch, so they should in theory work with my lava terrain as well, and any future terrain I build. So I'm literally using the hot melt cutter to just carve out a few interesting hunks of shapes from my abandoned pieces of polystyrene here. These are then just laid down randomly, try and figure out a network of ideas, which are then glued down using no nails. This is a cheaper brand called Hard as Nails, £1 from the pound shop. It works really well with polystyrene. It bonds very well to the EVA, so I've used this many times in the past. As anybody knows who's ever used polystyrene, it's very susceptible to damage. It can very easily be dinked and torn. So to offset the limitation of that, one effective method is to use a hot air gun to harden the surface off. This will sort of melt the surface, which will actually to some extent prepare it as well for spray paints if you're going to use spray paints. The only thing here is that obviously polystyrene does release some fairly noxious fumes, so be sure to wear a mask if you're ever doing this part. And so, polystyrene also comes in different densities, so some polystyrenes will take this better than others. In this instance, I'm going to go on to add further layers of texture to these blocks, so by the time I'm done they're going to be pretty damn hard wearing anyway, so it doesn't really matter for this. But if you were just going for straight up paint job, you want denser polystyrene to work with. In a pinch, when I'm backed into a corner for time, I will use fast methods for dry times, finish and that kind of thing. But in general, I don't worry too much about how long something is going to take to dry. I want it to be good, I want it to be durable, and so PVA is my most often used method of sealing practically anything. Yeah, it means you generally have to wait till the next day for to carry on, but it is still hands down one of the best sealants I've used, and definitely for polystyrene. The thing here is you have to be liberal with it. You've got to put a generous amount on, so you often see me pouring out huge dollops of PVA on my terrain, but it all makes the end result so much more durable. I'm also a big fan of old school texture techniques. I have to say I'm very envious of the XPS foam guys who can take a piece of tin foil and sort of hammer it into the surface of the XPS foam and get these beautiful rock textures. But unfortunately that's just not an option with EVA, it just won't take it. So generally it has to be something that you cover the EVA with. Kitchen roll is still one of the best sealing rock texture methods you can use, combined with PVA and sands and grits and the browning plaster that I use. It works a treat. So kitchen roll tends to come in multi-ply, and you want to take those plies apart so you're working with the thinnest sheet you can. Lay it down over the wet PVA. And you'll often see me dipping my brush into the water so that when I'm stabbing that brush back into the tissue, I can tug it and pull it and twist it, and it will go on to really make some lovely little textures that when painted and dry brushed will really pop. Now these next couple of stages I could have done in one go, but I'd actually left this one to dry overnight because of time issues. So in readiness, I had already carved and chopped up a bunch of scrap EVA ready to create the detail elements of these rocky outcrops for this board as well as the other three. One of the many things I do enjoy about EVA is that those little chunks that you cut off are every bit as hard wearing as the big pieces, which means you've always got an abundance of these ragged chunks that can be very effectively used in rocks and natural forms like this. These are readily and easily attached, carrying on with the no nails and just an artist palette knife to make sure that the rock pieces that I'm attaching sort of blend into whatever the ground mass is going to be, the flatter areas. And you can really just play with this aspect of the design. You know, you can just lay down wherever, however, and the no nails actually has a slow enough drying time that you're able to pick back out, move things around without being too committed instantly with, say, for example, hot melt glue. As I'm building the structure with the torn and cut pieces of EVA, I also like to use these slate chippings that you can get from any garden centre. They're relatively inexpensive. I have a large bag that cost a couple of pounds and I've been using them for at least a couple of years. So these help to blend the realism of the rocks, and then of course I go to anybody who's watched my videos at all will know that I'm a big fan of vermiculite. It is a sort of, I think it's like a ground cork. Again, you can get it from the garden centre, and so this gives me the 3 degrees of scale with the various texture elements that I'm placing. So once I'm happy with that step, I am back to the PVA, and this is one of the other reasons why I wanted the initial polystyrene blocks and their PVA and kitchen roll to dry, because I wanted to give these a second coat to make sure that they were really going to be able to handle gameplay at the table. So I coat this time though the whole board, blending into the texture details that I've just laid, and then I'm again back with the kitchen roll so that I can extend those little fissures and erosion marks of the initial rock texture down onto the ground plane and the flat areas of playability. After I've blended the kitchen roll into the rock details, I then reintroduce the vermiculite so that I can help to blend the change of texture. And I think it's really important to point out here as well that the more layers of either texturing, of painting, of surface details that you can apply, the better the end result. So here is my final layer of detailing, which is a browning plaster, and I've been asked about this browning plaster a few times now. This is actually what plasterers who are plastering your wall will use first. This is what will bond to the brick wall, so it is actually a really cheap, it's not as fine as finishing plaster. And I've got a 25 kilogram bag, and I think it cost me £10, and I've been using that for over 3 years now. So and I've barely touched the bag. It will go on and on and on and on, and it really is a lovely unifying, very fine grain substrate to use. But you have got to give it a really good dousing with water. So I use a spritzer, large spritzer, to make sure that it's thoroughly soaked so that it sets really nice and hard. Okay, with it all dry, it is finally on to paint. So the blocks themselves have been undercoated with black spray and then given a zenithal highlight with a light grey primer to set the tone for the rocks themselves. When it comes to paint, you need to not worry too much, especially on natural features like rock. Just throw some colour together and start laying it on. It really will all come through in the end. There's a technique called leopard spotting where various different colours of paint are allowed to just run and dribble together, and that is a really cracking way to paint rock structures and features. I have to say I didn't take that route with this, just simply because I've got so much rock to paint. So all I did here was mix up a deep brownish colour that was primarily burnt umber and black. Make sure it's real sort of runny, and I just brush it all over the terrain. And then I use a rag to start just dabbing and lifting off, so I get some variation of consistency of paint. So here we go. Here are the basic colours that I'm going to be using to do all of the layering up of colour on the rock structures. A lighter blue, a sort of purplish colour, black and white. That's going to give me all of the variation I need now to be able to go in and add those subtle colour shifts in the rock itself. I see very often rock painted with just variations of grey, and if you've taken any time at all to study rocks, you'll know that there's a lot more colour in rock than just grey. And so again, you can really play and have fun, and remember to build up in layers. What might initially look wrong will probably go on to look pretty cool when you've added other layers and washes of colour over the top. So don't be afraid about it. When you've finished playing with all of the colour variations, however you choose to go, keep yourself limited to 3 or 4 colours. You can see I added in a yellow to bring in some greens there. But you are going to unify all of that variation with your dry brush. Now I know a lot of people do a final dry brush. I like to do my dry brushing in 2 stages. The first one is a light variation using colours that I've already used in the initial variations with white added to it. So I'll just come up with one harmonious mix of colour and then tint it with white. following that, I will add a dark wash, which unfortunately I didn't get recorded. And again, that is usually made up of the two darkest colours that I've used in the variations, with a little black added and plenty water, so that the whole thing gets sort of a muting down. And it's these two stages that will go on to harmonise any of the colour variations you've put in the previous stages. And then I hit it again finally with another dry brush just in a few key areas. As with the River of Magma terrain piece that I also did, I know that this is going to take a fairly substantial amount of gameplay, so I want to make sure it is resilient to damage, and so I'm going to use a matte acrylic varnish to cover the whole thing. I only probably give it one coat, maybe two. And if you've never used this stuff before, don't be alarmed when it turns a milky white colour. It will dry perfectly clear. And that will just ensure that everything is sealed thoroughly. It doesn't matter how many cups of coffee get knocked over it, how many dice get rolled across it, or how many miniatures fall from it. It will be able to sustain most of what is done to it. And that's a good thing in my books.
So yeah, don't forget to stick around till the end of the video. That stop motion I'm really chuffed with. It looks great on this, it's good fun, a lot of hard work, but that hard work is worth it for the enjoyment I get from doing it, and the pleasure I get from seeing you guys enjoy it as well. So thank you to my subscribers, thanks to my patrons, you know, and please don't forget to comment, tell me what you think down there as well. Not only does that help the channel, but it helps to motivate me as I build this, as well as I build these pieces. I want to get bigger, badder, better. I want to bring you some really sort of out there stuff, and that likes, those comments, those subscribes really go a long way to helping that. If you really want to go the extra mile, of course, then there is my Patreon, and you can find the link to that down in the blurb there. That really is starting to show signs of a build, and I'm so super stoked to see that, because with that build I can create really top-notch video content, not just in my terrain but in my art, and also in the short film that I hope to bring out in the well, over the next 18 months, which is based on my own fantasy illustration. So guys, I really can't thank you enough for all of the support you give me, for all of the kind words, the comments. It really does make making this even more pleasurable.